Beeblebum's appeared on the channel a few times, but I've never really done a story about where Beeblebum came from and why it's a significant part of the family. So here it is. This is the origins of Beeblebum, the Beeblebum Genesis story. Our family car is going in for some repairs tomorrow, and this is me getting our project car, family project car, extra member of the family named Beeblebum out from mothballs. It's been sitting in the backyard for about 6 months, and this is the first start and drive, and it's a very tight turning circle with no power steering, so a bit of nudgery pokery was needed to actually get it in and out. And yes, I am wearing Ugg boots, don't judge me. Recording may stop. I've removed the audio because the camera was rattling against the window of the car. You'll hear that a little bit later. But the basic thing that I'm saying here is we bought this car in 2021 and we drove to a town called Crystal Brook to buy it. It was quite a warm day, the car had no air conditioning, and Scott and I sat in the heat and sweat our butts off in the car driving it back home. We did stop in Port Augusta on the way home to McDonald's and got some cool drinks on the way, but that means I can now speed up the rest of this clip and you don't need to hear all the rattling from the camera. That's good. Bollocks, 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 talking absolute nonsense. I do. Even like the traffic lights I tried to take off, and the person behind me didn't ramp up. This thing does not take off very quickly at all. And you can't run it in. Quick shopping trip later. Alright. Car park wondering what the hell I'm doing. Not get written off. Unfortunately, my choice in project cars is pretty poor, and I seem to pick unicorns made of unobtainium, cars that just, you would think there are a lot of parts available, but it turns out there just aren't. There are no more parts. So, and I like how they're making us leave. I think I could go around this way maybe. I don't really want to leave via the entrance, it feels unnatural to do that. That gate up there is shut. The one over there is shut, it's the normal exit. Maybe the one out here is open. Let's have a look. It looks like it is. So, right, so what's a rebound car? So before I had this car, I should say before the family had this car, I decided to, I had a few cars that, you know, for various reasons were just not doing what I wanted to do. So I decided to take the plunge and actually buy one of my dream cars, which was a Ford Focus ST170, which if you live in the UK, it's quite a common vehicle. If you live in the States, it's called a Ford Focus SVT, very common car. In Australia, only 100 came. So it was a very rare car here, and it was basically Ford's answer to the Subaru WRX back in the early 2000s, and it cost about the same, about 37, 40 grand. So I decided to buy one in 2016, and I got one transported over from Victoria on a bread truck. And it arrived, it was in great shape. I loved the car. It was a beautiful car to drive. It was a horrible car to own, because every time I needed parts for it, I couldn't just buy Ford Focus parts. The engine was a different engine, the suspension setup was slightly different, the gearbox was slightly different, so I ended up buying parts from the UK and the USA, including 5 power steering pumps, which is probably a story for another video. But I love the car. I would never have gotten rid of it. It was my forever car. For car people, it was just, I couldn't get a Mark II Escort. There's no way I could ever afford one. The Focus was such a nice car, classic design. It got crashed into 3 times, and 3 times I had it repaired because they couldn't replace it. And yeah, then in 2020 we were actually looking at buying a new car for the family. But we've been having some issues with our neighbours at our old house, So what we had to do was basically use our car money that we had saved as a deposit on a new house. And we basically made the snap decision one weekend when we were away looking at cars that we weren't going to buy a car, we were going to buy a house, and we started house hunting immediately when we got home. It got so bad with our neighbours that one day we actually just had to leave. We just packed things, snuck out the back of our house through the back alley, and we had to go. We couldn't stay anymore. In trying to get finance for a new house when you already have a house that you're paying off, we had to just try and drastically reduce our sort of debt on paper. Despite having that car paid for and having no money owing on any of our cars, we couldn't keep 3 cars and get approved for a mortgage. So the van is necessary for moving the Daleks around. It was too essential to doing stuff. Our family car, well, that had to stay as well because it was newer, it was more reliable, it was automatic, so my wife was more comfortable driving it. So it just came down to that the Focus had to go. It had to go purely so it looked better on paper to get a loan. So I sold it to a young fella who lives outside of the capital city in a little sort of country town out there in the hills. He got it for a lot less than what I paid for it. He got it with all the spares and mods and all the original parts as well. So certainly got a very reasonable deal. And within 2 months of him buying it, he crashed it, and he had it up for sale again for parts for more than what he paid for it. So that was tough, and it honestly kind of broke me to get rid of that car. It sounds really selfish, and I kind of beat myself up about it now, about feeling that way over a vehicle, but I can't buy another one, you know. Anyway, I needed to fill the hole in my heart with some kind of vehicle that would be a bit of fun, and I'd always fancied buying a Mark 1 first generation Festiva, WA Festiva they're called in Australia. So I bought this. I put an ad out on Gumtree that I was looking for one. I had one that I was about to buy that was a manual. Then some kind of shady stuff happened, and I think it would have been better if everyone had just been honest with each other. I think we were trying to play the game of getting a bargain, they were trying to play the game of getting as much as they can for it without looking shady, just like we were, and it all just fell apart. This one came up a couple of weeks later while I was out of town. So on a weekend we decided to make the trip over to go and see it. I bought it certainly a lot cheaper, but I bought it thinking I won't have any of the problems of the Focus because it's just a Festiva. I mean, it's the same as a Mazda 121, there'll be parts available everywhere. And if I could have picked one car that is harder to get parts for than a Focus ST170, I've done it. I've done my job. This car is so hard to get parts for. I'm trying to get a door lock for this, and the carburetor auto choke, which is like a wax pellet or something. It's unobtainium. Anyway, my son loves it. He's named it Beeblebum, so we've had some stickers made up for it. We have put some different wheels on it. I basically just tidied it up, serviced it, and it gets driven very, very occasionally. But our family car is going in for some body repair tomorrow, so I've had to register it and take it out of mothballs. It's sat for 6 months, which is why I'm taking it around for a drive now, and sweating my braces off as well because it's only 26 degrees here today, but it's like 88% humidity. We've just had a week of 40s, so you would think, oh, it's much cooler now, but it is so much more sweaty and gross than it has been in a long time. In fact, I'm surprised that the camera is still recording. Usually my camera dies out by now. So I'll shut up, and I might pull over and change the camera angle so we get some of the drive. So what I'll do, I'll go for a little drive, bit of fun flash car history here. Oh, I didn't work. Hopefully there won't be too many bumps. Probably shouldn't be adjusting the camera while I'm trying to drive. So, why a Mark 1 Festiva or a WA Festiva? It's also known as the Kia Pride, Mazda Demio, and Mazda 121 in other places in the world. Probably more predominantly the Kia Pride. The Mazda 121 variant was only ever a 2-door. This is the 4-door version. The 4-door version, evidently, much rarer in the world, much harder to get parts for. The exhaust for this was dearer than buying an exhaust for my Focus and shipping it from overseas. And it only came over from Melbourne. It's just, you've got to find new old stock parts and you've got to pay whatever people want for them. We don't have an exhaust fabricator in town anymore, so if you want to do the work yourself, I suppose it almost would have been cheaper for me to buy a welder and some pipe and, you know, at a bandsaw and learn the hard way. But a Ford Festiva, why a Festiva? Good question. Basically, when I was 14, my parents separated, and then at some point post that, we had to think about what would happen if we, you know, could afford to buy a car. Obviously, I won't go into detail about what happened and why and wherefore it happened. We can't change it. But we drove past this little car yard that I'm about to drive past now, and there was a red WA Festiva 4-door on the lot, and I think at the time it was about $6,000 or $7,000. It was probably the cheapest car on the lot at the time. There's no cars that price on any car lots in town now. But my mum and I looked at it and thought, yeah, that'd be a nice little run around. It would be cheap, it would be easy to park, and it would be a modern car. And my mum spent a lot of time driving around in my Mark 2 Escort being pulled over by the police for smoke and leaking exhaust and stuff like that. Not really being able to afford to fix it. My dad did come around quite a lot and try to help fix things and get things going. And being a teenager, I was clearly the most pleasant individual on the earth at that time. Yeah. And I know now from working with teenagers that age that is not true. So it kind of never happened. Mum eventually got a car through the local car dealership, which didn't turn out to be a great vehicle. In fact, she had to finish paying for it about 2 years after it stopped running. She couldn't afford to really take it to anyone. She was in that kind of weird situation where people would be saying, oh well, if you can't afford to have it maintained, you shouldn't own a car, but you also need to be able to get to work, and there ain't no buses that operate at 4:30 in the morning. Country South Australia, so this is the car yard over here. I'll try and come over and if you can imagine, there was another building here, and a little car like this would have been parked here in this little spot. And this was all second-hand cars, and they had a building here, the sort of more premium cars down there, and the main dealer building at the end there, service and stuff. This was another yard at the time. This was a Toyota yard, all gone now, but this is where we drove past. We used to come past here after work and think, gee, wouldn't it be nice if we could afford one of these cars, a nice car that would start and drive every day. Now look what we got. So I like it. I like the originalness of it. I do like the 90s, screams 90s stickers on the side. Unfortunately up here it's starting to rust through, so we're going to have to do something about that, but I do plan on keeping it. Luckily no harsh acceleration down here, but there's not been any car yards here for a very long time. Basically got 2 in town now, so there's a bit of a monopoly on cars. We've got one new and used and one used, and that's it. The rest of it is just people flipping cars in their backyards on Marketplace. So I'm going to head home and maybe put up a blind. So what are the goals for Beeblebum? Well, one of the goals is that I would like to eventually, this is pie in the sky stuff, I would like to manual swap it if I could ever find a 4-door manual that I could take enough parts from. But of course I'm no mechanic, I would have to pay a mechanic to do it. And I would also eventually like to, I'd like to go electric. I think if there was a car that was screaming out to become an electric runaround car, basically for driving the 1 kilometre to work and home every day, this is it. You know, I can imagine charging this up off the solar, driving it around town, and you know, it would never go out of town. It would only have a range of 20 or 30 kilometres, but I imagine you could do that, charge it up for free. That'd be pretty awesome. I'd like to do something like that eventually. But in the meantime, I can't get rid of it. My son loves it too much. In fact, the background on my phone is the day we got back to town from picking it up, and the first thing he did after getting out of the car was walk up to the bonnet and hug it, even though he was dripping sweat. And he was complaining about the air conditioner not working well enough in our other car on the way down. He sweated his ass off driving home. So it's become a bit of a member of the family. We don't talk about it as the festiva. We say we're going to move Beeblebum. I'm going to register Beeblebum and take it out. It's just the way it is. And that's okay. I may not be a mechanic. I've changed the oil in it, changed spark plugs and air filters and stuff. I can do a little bit. And it's not the end of the world if something goes wrong with it. I know that. I think my boy will be a bit heartbroken if something happens to it, but it's cheap transport. Easy to get around. We're just trying to mix up the fuel in it though. The petrol's been sitting for 6 months. So we're just trying to, we've put some 98 in it, add a bit more jazz into its tank, and hopefully driving it around shakes it up a little bit, mixes it, disperses it. Hopefully some of that fuel that's started to turn into nail varnish will be getting used up, or dilution, power of dilution. Fancy way home along the highway, so I can open this baby up to see if we can do 80 k's today. Truth be told, I'm actually really happy to be out. I've been unwell the last few days, so any chance to get out, even if I am sweating the races off in the car, does beat sitting at home. Still feel like garbage, but I'd rather feel like garbage doing this. And you? Can we see around? This is where I've got to be really careful because this car does not have massive acceleration. There we go. Foot's nearly flat. Ready? Here we go. Whoa. Foot's flat to the floor, 60, 65, 70, 75. I'm going to get to 80 before I have to turn 80. Christ, the brake's pretty bad. But a bit of, I'm hoping it's the old Ferrari tune-up, you know, a bit of spirit of driving around will help. picks up the fuel a bit. There you go, 3 pallets, Daisy. Whenever I go past here, I've got to check out for my son if there are any lawn mowers. Any Barrys? Nah, no Barrys. No Barrys today. Every lawnmower is named Barry. There you go, you're welcome. Now you know that. It's funny that there is quite a little following for these cars, just not really in Australia. A lot of the parts off the later versions are interchangeable, just not this one. So, like I say, don't ask me to pick a classic car that I love, because I'll pick something that is very, very niche. Now I've got to move this and leave this outside. Whoop, there we go, Blair Witch camera angle, because got to get the roof box off the family car before it goes to the crash repairer tomorrow, because otherwise it won't fit through their roller door.